The scent of a hospital never truly leaves your skin. For Julian, that sharp, sterile odor of antiseptic and floor wax had become a suffocating daily weight. For over 8 grueling months, he had spent his afternoons sitting by the bedside of his wife, Clara. Once a vibrant woman whose infectious laughter could fill the quietest rooms, she was now reduced to a fragile silhouette. Her skin was translucent against the stark white linen sheets, and her eyes were constantly clouded by pain. A cruel, aggressive illness was systematically draining the life from her, and the doctor's updates grew increasingly hopeless. Julian, however, was not built for grim realities. He was a man who lived entirely on the surface of life, thriving in its warmth, its beauty, and its absolute lack of responsibility. Watching Clara fade away was like looking into a terrifying mirror that showed his own mortality, and he despised it. The heavy silences of the hospital room irritated him to his very core. The soft, rhythmic beep of the heart monitor felt like a cruel countdown clock, ticking away his own youth and freedom. He didn't want to be a caretaker. He wanted to live, to breathe, and to escape. Then came Elena. Elena was Clara's closest friend since their university days. In the beginning of the crisis, she arrived at their house under the guise of solidarity and friendship. She brought homemade meals and offered Julian a soft shoulder to cry on. But Elena, much like Julian, possessed a shallow core wrapped in an attractive exterior. She quickly recognized the growing resentment, the weakness, and the desperate need for an escape that was rotting inside Julian. It started with lingering glances over a shared cup of coffee in the quiet kitchen while Clara slept fitfully upstairs. Then came the soft touches on the arm that lingered just a second too long. Within 2 short months, the boundaries of loyalty completely shattered into dust. While Clara was fighting for her breath in a sterile hospital ward, Julian and Elena were busy rewriting their morality in the dark corners of expensive restaurants and secret weekend getaways. The guilt bothered Julian initially, but Elena was an expert at justification. "You can't save her, Julian," she would whisper into the darkness, her fingers tracing his jawline. "You deserve to be happy. You shouldn't have to die a slow death just because she is." And Julian, desperate for an escape, eagerly believed her. The ultimate breaking point arrived on a gloomy, rainy Tuesday morning, just hours before Clara was scheduled to begin a highly experimental, notoriously agonizing round of chemotherapy. Julian walked into the hospital room, but he didn't sit down. He stood near the door, his hands jammed deep into his coat pockets, completely unable to look Clara in the eye. "I can't do this anymore, Clara," he said. His voice was cold, detached, and heavily rehearsed. "This illness has completely consumed our lives. It has destroyed our marriage. I am leaving. I cannot watch you die anymore. I need to save myself." Clara did not scream at him. She did not break down into hysterical tears. She simply turned her weak head and looked at him with large, hollow eyes that had already witnessed the worst of physical pain. She saw right through him, the cowardice, the betrayal, and the shallow soul. "Go then," she whispered. Her voice was barely a breath against the sterile air, yet it carried an immense weight. Julian didn't look back. He walked out of the hospital, packed his bags, and immediately moved into a luxurious new penthouse with Elena. He chose to look exclusively forward, blocking Clara's number and ignoring the past. He convinced himself that he had made the pragmatic choice of a survivor. He was finally happy, or so he thought. 2 years passed like a beautiful, fleeting dream. Julian and Elena lived a life of absolute indulgence, high society parties, international travel, and the pursuit of material luxury. They never spoke Clara's name. It was as if she'd been completely erased from human history. Julian truly believed that he was the exception to the rule, that he had escaped the shadows of his past entirely unscathed. But the universe keeps a meticulous, unyielding ledger. It never loses the debt. It began with a persistent dry cough that Julian easily dismissed as a minor seasonal allergy. Then came the intense night sweats that left him waking up freezing, his body soaking the expensive silk sheets. Within a single month, a strange, unnatural fatigue settled deep into his bones. Walking up a single flight of stairs felt like climbing an unforgiving mountain. When Julian finally visited a specialist, the diagnostic process felt like a frustrating case of déjà vu. The blood tests, the cold CT scan machines, the heavy silence. It was all too familiar. Finally, he found himself watching the grim look on the doctor's face as he walked into the room holding a thick medical file. "I'm deeply sorry, Mr. Vance," the doctor said with genuine pity. "The biopsy results are conclusive. It confirms an aggressive, advanced malignancy." Julian's breath caught violently in his throat. The diagnosis was the exact identical illness that had plagued Clara. The cosmic irony was a physical blow to his chest, leaving him gasping for oxygen in the middle of the office. That very evening, Julian sat in his living room, trembling violently as he broke the terrifying news to Elena. Deep down, a desperate part of him expected her to hold him and tell him they would fight it together. Instead, he watched a terrifyingly familiar expression slowly cross Elena's face. It was a cold look of pure disgust, panic, and immediate selfish withdrawal. The exact expression that he himself had worn 2 years ago by Clara's bedside. "Cancer?" Elena whispered, taking a deliberate step back. "Julian, I don't know what to say. This is too much. I can't handle this kind of darkness." The next few months were a brutal descent into hell. As Julian's chemotherapy began, his once proud body quickly withered. His hair fell out in clumps. His skin turned a ghostly shade of grey, and he spent his days violently nauseous and broken. Predictably, Elena's presence grew incredibly scarce. She was always too busy at the office or needing air. One rainy evening, Julian crawled out of his bed to find Elena standing in the hallway next to 2 packed suitcases. "I'm so sorry, Julian," she said, refusing to look him in the eyes. "I'm just not strong enough for this. The hospital visits, the sickness, it's ruining my mental health. I have to look out for my own life." Julian leaned heavily against the wall, a bitter, hollow laugh escaping his cracked lips. How could he condemn her for reading so perfectly from the exact cruel script that he himself had written? "Go," Julian whispered, his voice cracking as he echoed the very words his innocent wife had spoken to him. Elena didn't hesitate. She walked out, leaving Julian completely and devastatingly alone in the dark. A month later, Julian sat on a wooden bench in the clinic courtyard. He wore a heavy beanie to cover his bald head, his clothes hanging loosely off his emaciated frame. Staring blankly at the concrete, he was drowning in toxic regret. The physical agony of his disease was nothing compared to the crushing weight of his total loneliness. He had reaped exactly what he had sown. Suddenly, a soft shadow fell over him. Julian? The voice was melodic and instantly recognizable. Julian raised his head, bracing for a hallucination. But standing before him in the sunlight was Clara. He gasped in disbelief. This was not the dying woman he had abandoned. Clara's cheeks were flushed with a healthy color, and her hair had grown back in thick waves. Against all odds, the experimental treatment had worked a miracle. She had achieved a total remission. She was completely cured. Clara, Julian choked out, tears spilling down his hollow cheeks. You're well. Elena left me the moment it got hard, just like I did to you. I am so sorry. The universe gave me exactly what I deserved. Clara looked at him with a profound, quiet sadness. There were no malice or anger in her eyes. The universe didn't punish you, Julian, Clara said, her voice gentle yet unwavering. You built a life based on selfishness, and you chose a partner who valued the exact same thing. When the storm came, your foundation simply collapsed. I survived because I found out how strong I was when I had nothing left to lose. She took a step back, adjusting her purse. I forgave you a long time ago, Julian. Not for your sake, but for mine. Because holding on to your betrayal was keeping my body sick. She looked at him one last time with a peaceful smile of closure. I hope you find your own strength. Goodbye. Clara turned and walked away. Julian watched her go, her stride confident and light as she moved directly into the bright, wide-open world toward a beautiful future. Julian lowered his head into his trembling hands. The courtyard grew quiet, save for the distant sound of an ambulance siren. He was left entirely alone in the shadow of the building, a prisoner of his own choices, finally understanding the true, unyielding weight of karma.